So, hello everybody. Today I'm going to talk to you about The Straightway Lost. This is a 5e compatible adventure and source book set in the magical Renaissance of the late 15th century, the last couple of years of the late 15th century in Italy. And to be more precise, in Florence. That's the base of this adventure. It's published by a German publisher called Vortex Publishing. I believe that they are in Hamburg. And for those of you who have watched my videos on Serenissima Obscura, this is essentially the first part of Serenissima Obscura. The two of them can be played completely independently of each other. And each of these books is a complete book and a standalone book. It contains everything you need with regard to the setting, everything you need with regard to the customized species and classes, because although this is based on 5e 2014, very important, there are species that are not part of 5e. There are also species that they tell you not to use because they don't fit the setting. And there are also particular classes which were designed specifically for this particular adventure or for this magical Renaissance, if you like, duology, which you don't find in the 5e core books. If you are going to play, however, you will need the 5e Player's Handbook or a resource that gives you information on how to create characters. And for some of the species, like humans, etc., that are not detailed in this book, you can play them, but they don't tell you exactly how to create a human character. Or if you want to play a cleric with a tempest or war domain, they will not tell you how to do it. You will have to get the Player's Handbook, because as far as I can tell, the SRD for 2014 that is available, that I've been able to find, doesn't actually contain any information on war or tempest. It only contains information about the life cleric. But that's just upfront. So this is not a standalone book. So if you just have this, you can't play without access to resources for 5e 2014, just like the Free Ligan, Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth thing cannot be played without access to a source book for 5th edition. But what is this book about then? Well, like I said, it's set in the magical Renaissance, and I'm just going to read from the frontispiece: The Straightway Lost, adventuring between heaven and hell in a fantastical Renaissance Italy. And it basically goes back to the Divine Comedy by Dante, where Dante basically goes through the underworld, through Inferno, Purgatory, and then finally makes it to basically the heavens. And it's a story of a progression of a human being. And they have taken this progression of this human being and turned it into an adventure. Kind of. So it does help if you can kind of envisage yourself going into a world that is very much infused by, on the one hand, Christianity, because we're talking Renaissance Italy, super Christian, but also the Neoplatonists are finding their footing. It's Renaissance, so it means the Renaissance of the classical learning, classical information, classical authors are also coming back in vogue. There's also even a bull by I forget which pope around this time, who basically acknowledges the existence of magic and doesn't even condemn it. And it's pre witch burning, pre Inquisition. So the Dominicans already exist and they are starting to investigate, but nobody has been burnt at this stage yet. It's also post Crusades. And when you get this book, you will find, like I said, the setting. You will find information about all of the special abilities, special classes that exist, and they're very interesting. They are all the specifically made classes. All are based on the Renaissance vision of the human, where the vision is that a human should be all that they can be. So it's not based on putting somebody on a pedestal, and you've got the ideal lady that everybody kind of like that you have in the Middle Ages that everybody kind of adores, and she's like on this pedestal. It is about people. It's people-centric. It's not about thinking, oh, we live this life, but basically we're aspiring to everything in the beyond, and it's all about going to paradise and that kind of thing. That's still important, but people are also turning their view more to this life and improving themselves and learning and studying. And the polymath, the person who is able to do many things, is a child of this time. And that's just a very brief overview of the historical background. There is a lot of information about the historical background, and this is a game that I would say requires a group that is going to be willing to immerse themselves into that background. It's very different from your normal 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, where it's basically, oh, there's a dragon, let's kill it. We don't care if it's Eberron or Sword Coast or whichever place you're playing in, or Dragonlance, although of course dragons are slightly different in Dragonlance, but it's all very interchangeable, and most of the time it doesn't really matter where you are. And even like in 5e, they tell you, well, you can put these adventures wherever you want to go. This cannot be put wherever you want to go. This is set in Italy, it's set in the Renaissance, and there are historical figures in this book that play an important role. So you really have to ask yourselves, are you going to have fun playing in the real world that has been twisted by a couple of degrees, because magic is real? There are also non-human species like half-dwarves, dwarves, half-elves, elves, the queens of fairy, the fates. Lucifer is, of course, real. You have Profondi, who are the tieflings, and you've also got Nephilim, who are basically descended from the original angels that were sent to Earth and then mated with women. So you really need to accept this. And you also, and this is made very clear, you also have to make sure that you as a character, not you as a person, but you as a character, take a stance and make a decision how you view Christianity and how you view Catholicism. This is, the Reformation hasn't happened yet. It's 1492, so Luther has not even posted his theses yet. That happened 4 years later. This is what you have to bear in mind. Having said this, if this sounds like it's intriguing, and I can tell you it is intriguing, and it's going to be a great read if you buy this book, then this book is for you. So I've started reading this book, and I'm going to now tell you a little bit about the background of the story as it is explained in this book. So if you are going to play this scenario or this adventure, stop listening. If you're going to run it, keep listening. If you want to get a decision help on whether to buy the book, the answer is simply go and buy the book. I've read so many settings, so many guides, so many adventures, and you can see many of those behind me. I've never read anything like this. Never. It's a gift. It's also exceedingly well written. I really love reading it. It was written for nerds like me and for people who have an interest in society, sociology, history of our planet and our world, but would like to play this with a slight twist. So this is a really, really, really excellent book. And in this story, so now spoiler starts. In the story of Lucifer is real. Lucifer saw that mankind was created and believed that this was going to bring the downfall of God. He argued with God. He said, that's not a good idea. They're going to bring you down. And he rebelled, and then he was cast down. So we know this from the Bible. If we believe in it, that's a different matter. But in this world, this is what happened. It's reality. So basically, Lucifer was cast down, literally cast down from the heavens, and he fell to earth. And everybody knew he was going to impact there. And the three fates realized, oh my God, this is going to be really difficult and problematic because it's going to shatter Earth. So they basically started to weave on their loom and managed to somehow ensure that while he impacted and fell to Earth, he didn't destroy Earth. But what happened was the realms of magic, the so-called possibility, and the realm of permanence, which is the non-magical realm or non-magical essence, were torn asunder. And he basically fell. He created a crater, which is Inferno, and then basically came out on the other side where he built a mountain, which is where paradise is. Okay, so that's literally the picture of the world, the picture of what this looks like physically. So we're talking about something that we may only consider something that is metaphysical to be physical. And here is a picture, and I'm not sure if you can make this out. This is the world according to Dante. And down here you have Earth and you have Jerusalem, and basically he fell down there and he created the mountain and he also created the crater. And that is just a fact. And now we've got the realm of the Fae, which is the realm where possibility is everything and there's very little permanence. And as a result, having children is quite difficult. So only the fairy queens are really allowed to have children. And even that is kind of difficult. So many fae or elves, as they are called, if they want children, they just abduct them. So that's where the changelings come from. Or they basically say, okay, I do want to have a family. I do want to have some form of permanence. So I'm going to go to the human realm. And that's where the elves and half elves that we know of come from. But that's essentially the situation. And the fairy queens, there's 3 of them. Of course, there's always 3 and they're always women, of course. Try everything that they can to make sure that the sundering isn't getting worse. But they're also, you know, hell is real. And one of them has a dream that a mortal man is going to change the balance, and you know, it's going to end in a catastrophe, but she doesn't know who it is. Is it Lorenzo de' Medici? Or is it his greatest critic of the time, a Dominican monk who also lives in Florence, Italy, and his name is, and I keep forgetting his name. His name, okay, now for a musical interlude. His name is, where did he go? Where is your name? Savonarola. And he is a member of the Dominican Order, and he is trying to bring about the end of the Medici reign or rule, because okay, Florence is kind of like a democracy, but then it isn't, because people do get to vote, but they also say in the book, well, that, you know, it's made sure that only the right votes get through. So, you know, yeah, it's a democracy. Anyway, so basically he wants to get rid of the Medicis. He is unhappy with the loose morals that have crept in. And he's also very opposed to non-humans, because obviously non-humans do exist. It is known, but they kind of have to keep to themselves, and they are kind of suppressed and frowned upon. And the Medicis don't seem to have that much of a problem with them. But he does. And so basically this is kind of like, also if you have non-human player characters, for them this is really important, because it's almost like a make or break. If this guy prevails, if Savonarola prevails, they will have no rights. If the Medicis prevail, then they will be able to come out into the open. And of course, in La Serenissima Obscura, which is the second part of this, the players have been successful. Savonarola has been basically defeated, and the Medicis prevail. Lorenzo survives beyond his real death in the real world, and the augmento, so basically the influx of possibility into the permanence, so of magic into our world, has been increased, and the non-humans have found a place in society, or let's say a better place in society. So if you play this and your group does not pass the test or doesn't really defeat Savonarola, if you want to play Serenissima Obscura, you would actually have to create new characters because the setup is completely different. But anyway, so in this book, this fairy queen knows that it's either Lorenzo or Savonarola who's going to bring about a huge disruption in the permanence possibility framework, and she needs to avoid this. She needs to prevent this because she doesn't know what kind of consequence this is going to have. So she's spying on them and trying to find out. And then Savonarola is trying to discredit the Medici, and he does this by planting a murderer amongst the Medici guests, and a murder happens. It's a terrible one, and he gets to investigate it, and that's how our characters are brought in, because he is trying to basically get them to play his agents. He wants to use them to get his own ends, and that's where the story starts. So the first part is really, the first scenes are the scenes of a big feast where a murder happens. The characters can or cannot decide to investigate it. It doesn't matter. And there's also a solution to it. If the players do choose to investigate, then the murderer will be named and they can actually bring them to justice. But that's not the end of the story. They will then be roped in by Savonarola to uncover the whole story, as it were, and they will be sent down to meet Dante's Inferno. They will go down, they will meet the Queen of Fairy, they will go down to Purgatory, they will go down to Hell, and end up in paradise if all goes well, and then come back to Florence and will be able to vindicate the Medici, and will prevent Savonarola from prevailing and basically taking over the reign of Florence. And this book is going to take a lot for you to play as the GM, because there's a lot of information. It is very concise, but also very dense. You really have to sit down. I suggest you sit down, you make yourself a mood board, you make yourself almost like one of those, okay, so who is this? What is their motivation? So almost turning this into one of those, I call them Fox Mulder boards, where he basically pins all of the people, and then he makes those connections using yarn and whatnot. But it is a complex story. It's incredibly fascinating because the places where you will go, Inferno, Purgatory, Heaven, are so interesting also from a historical and sociological point of view, because this happens to be the Western heritage that we're talking about. It's Christianity and the classics. And it is, if you've been to school in, let's say, Europe, Western Europe, or even Eastern Europe, I would say, these stories will ring true. You will see things that you've heard about. You will, whether you believe them or not, is beside the point. It's just, in this story, they are real. You cannot actually say God doesn't exist, because if you play a Profondi, or if you Profonda, or if you play a Nephilim, you have been in the presence of God or your ancestors have been in the presence of God. They know he exists. So there is no debate. So that's a very interesting take on things. The art is second to none. I really love it. It is great. The writing is great. But it does take a lot to digest it. It's not something where you can sit down, oh, I have a game tonight, I'm just going to read the next 10 pages and we'll be able to run today's session. That's not how this works. This is super complex, not complicated, but complex. It takes a lot to read this and a lot to digest this. But I totally believe that if you are going to engage with this material, you're going to have a blast, given the right group. There will be fights, I'm pretty sure. And they also say that, yes, even in the second chapter, you can have a fight if you want to, but you don't have to. But it is all about social interactions. It's all about interacting with fate, also with the metaphysical, with beings from this world and then the next and then some. But it is about the journey. It is also, you're really basically living your own epic. When somebody says, oh yeah, and epic play, this is epic play, because you are embarking on the trope of the heroes or heroines' journey, where they will go somewhere and they will come back a changed person. And it is highly satisfying to read this kind of book, because it is an intellectual joy to engage with that material. And it's arguably the deepest role-playing book I've ever read, and I've read plenty. So this is a clear hint, you should buy it, but buyer beware, caveat emptor. You can buy this and read it and have great fun with it, even if you're never going to run it. But if you're planning on running this, I would suggest to really sit down with your group and discuss this before you make the investment, both the monetary and the time investment. But if you do, I promise you, you will have a blast. I would say 3 to 4 players max, because I don't think it's important to have a large group, because all of this, we have to have almost all roles from the standard group filled, because otherwise we're going to die on day one when we encounter the rats in the basement of the tavern. That's not like this. It's really about thinking on your feet and about engaging with the Renaissance and with the vibe of that era. And if you do this, then you will have a blast. So that's, again, The Straightway Lost by Vortex. Available on their website, and probably also because it's got an ISBN number, does it? It must have. If it is, then you can also buy it in normal bookshops, or you can buy it in role-playing FLGSs, the friendly local game store. And yeah, I can only recommend it. Talk to you soon. Bye.